Hello, and welcome back to the Green Standard podcast powered by Veriheal, where we talk about all things cannabis. And today we welcome Yolanda and Angela from the Georgia Medical Cannabis Society. The Georgia Medical Cannabis Society is an organization who makes it their mission to make medical cannabis more accessible across the board for residents of their state. And they do this through education and activism and just staying on the cutting edge of what's changing in the Georgia medical scene. So today I talked to Yolanda and Angela about the origins of this organization, as well as real actionable things that Georgia residents can do to try to see a change in the Georgia cannabis landscape. It was a great conversation. These women are so knowledgeable, they're so committed to the cause, and they are hilarious. I cannot wait for you to hear this conversation. Before we get into it, if you are wondering if medical cannabis is the right choice for you, Veriheal can help you get all of your questions answered. We can link you with a registered cannabis physician in your area that can help you get the recommendations, the answers you need to get your medical cannabis card. So if that's something you're interested in, visit Veriheal.com, that's Veriheal.com to get started. Let's get into it. Thank you so much for joining me here on the Veriheal podcast. Super excited for this conversation. Why don't we start with you guys introducing yourselves a little bit? Who are you? What do you do? Where are you located?
And I'm Angela Weston, one of the co-founders of the Georgia Medical Cannabis Society, and we're located in Atlanta, Georgia. And then have Yolanda
Bennett. I go by the moniker Herbal Trucker. Been here. Well, I've been in Georgia all my life. Angela is
transplant from Louisiana,
yeah.
But I've been
Incredible.
here over 20 years now, so I'm a peach now.
Love that.
But no, you're still a Saints fan.
I am still a Saints fan. I haven't migrated over to Atlanta Falcons yet. Nope. Still a Saints fan.
And maybe never will.
Rivals too. Right.
Gotta keep things interesting, But Yolanda, I did see in your little bio on your guys' website that Herbal Trucker moniker. Can you explain that a little bit? Where did this name come from?
Okay, I'm a former truck driver. That was a job that I loved. I mean, I all my entire life, I always wanted to be a truck driver. And I mean, not many kids, I don't know, maybe all, I don't know. I don't know why I just wanted to be a truck driver. I guess it could have been like the Smokey and the Bandit type thing and BJ and the Bear kind of era. But after leaving the Department of Corrections, I stepped out on faith and I started driving trucks. And unfortunately, due to my illness, I was forced out of trucking. And like I say, my happiest days were behind the wheel. And it's I wanted to make sure while I was out here that I held on to something that I really loved, while I was out here. Because, logistics is something that is in me regardless. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I Googled, I said, there's not another Herbal Trucker. There are Herbal Trucker hats. And I'm like, you know what? Herbal Trucker.
That's me now,
Yeah.
Fill that spot.
I got dibs. Herbal Trucker.
Yes. So that is super fun. And I have a lot of follow-up questions about being a trucker, but maybe I'll save that for later. Because You're right. You don't hear a lot of kids being like, when I grow up, I want to be a truck driver. But just to get this little worm out of my brain, what is the longest journey you took as a truck driver? What does that shift look like?
Well, I know that during that time you have operating hours up to 14 hours. And back then you could, I don't know about now, but you could drive up to 10 hours a day. And then they started changing out the time frame where you had to take 30-minute breaks and stuff per DOT. However, I've driven solo, because the company that I worked for, it was a slip seat company, meaning, well, it was a, what do you call that? Less than a load, an LTL company that I used to work for. And so we couldn't have any riders. I rode by myself. So I drove East Coast, West Coast. Well, sort of. I drove from Georgia all the way up to Fresno, Sacramento, by myself, new driver. I used to run the north a lot in the wintertime, because the roads were better for me. Indianapolis, I pretty much have done cross country by myself, and I used to pull doubles. Those double trailers? That's what I used to drive. I used to drive those doubles because I used to make that joke. I was like, you know what? People was like, I don't see how you drive those doubles. 2 trailers. I said, you know what? You have to think about your arm. Wouldn't you want an elbow in your arm? Because a lot of people drive those van trucks or big long trucks. And you got to think about turning. And it's like, you can't bag those up. Well, if you're backing up, you're not moving forward to make money. So I just want to go forward. So I would prefer to have an elbow when I'm moving my arm versus than straight.
Trying to turn it.
Yeah, so doubles were good for me.
Yes, I've never thought about it like an elbow. That's fascinating. And what a beautiful, a great way to see the country by yourself behind the wheel. That's so badass. Thank you for sharing that. But you mentioned, that you are a medical cannabis patient, and you both are. Is that correct?
Yes.
So before we get into the origins of the Georgia Medical Cannabis Society, I want to hear about your individual experiences as medical cannabis patients, kind of how you found the plant, how you realized that it worked for your specific symptoms. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Well, for me, I found the plant years ago, I would say, when I turned 35. That was the first. I knew about it before, but the first time I'd ever smoked was age 35. Okay, 35. Because of course I had that stigma from my parents. That was something that you were not supposed to do. And then, I saw it, and one day I was just like, okay, I'll try it. First time in life. And it wasn't I didn't think anything of it as far as medicinal purposes, because that was never something that was ever addressed. It was always something that was illegal. But
right.
But truly finding the plant, I would say, was back around 2017, 2018, when she became ill, and then ended up needing it at that moment to get off of the number of opioids and so forth they had her on for pain. That's when I really truly discovered what this plant was good for and what it would actually do. And so that's what really changed my mindset, seeing how well she was able to ease her pain, get better, and she'll tell the rest of her story about everything about that. But that's when I found the plant for me. And then also after that, I started to have some illnesses myself, and realized that for my neuropathy, that was better than taking the gabapentin, which I couldn't really function at work with. It's horrible story about what happened at work taking gabapentin. Just I started slurring, and my coworkers had no idea. It was like, what is going on with you? And I was hearing myself. I'm like, why am I slurring? But the medication had me so discombobulated I couldn't even function. So I had to stop and lay my head on my desk for a while till that subsided, so that I can complete my day. And so at that point is when I said, okay, hold on. So I started talking to my provider as well. And that's when I got my medical cannabis card and off the gabapentin.
Yes, that's so funny, because when you think about the stigma against cannabis, you don't people are shocked to realize that some people use medical cannabis while they're working. So you don't think of stoners as being functional on the clock, but it turns out that even the pharmaceuticals you were using was causing an even more non-functional effect, right? And so that little switch to medical cannabis maybe says something about the status of the stigma. You know what I mean? The truth behind these stereotypes we hold.
Exactly. And fortunate enough that I worked at a place that did not drug test, so I didn't have that issue at all. So that was wonderful for me to be able to use my medicine and still be able to function at work, and still, to this very day. We're talking 2019 for me? Yeah, it was 2019 for me. When I actually, became a medical cannabis patient at that point. And so, ever since, and I've been functioning at the same job. I'm going on 8 years there now. So,
oh yeah,
so it's not a problem.
Yes. And so, Yolanda, can you tell a little bit about your personal experience with medical cannabis?
Hello? Well, my idea of what cannabis was like she said, like with the gateway drug type thing, Different Strokes era, where you had Nancy Reagan coming on the TV show talking about a whole bunch of lies about what cannabis could do. But then throughout my life, I became a correctional officer. So pretty much from the time I was in my early 20s all the way up until I became disabled, I've had to be subjected to drug tests. Mm-hmm. And so it was far from my mind. So I used to make a joke all the time. I said, you know what, when I retire, I'm going to smoke a pound a week. I just used to joke because I just, took on the stance that it was more recreation until I needed it. And I was like, I didn't utilize cannabis until 2017. And it was a sugar cookie that I purchased. And I ate that cookie that night, went to sleep, woke up the next morning, and I was crying. Why was I crying? Because that was the first time in years that I had awakened without a pain in my body. You remember that? Mm-hmm. And I was like, from that
whoa.
Yeah, because, I was really sick because I was used to driving over 600 miles a day, 700 miles a day. This is what I used to do 5 days a week at night. And it was terrible because I was in an environment where people didn't respect the truck and they were smoking the truck because I'm highly allergic to tobacco smoke. And so cannabis was the only thing was able to have me weaned off of the steroids, because I went through a steroid crisis. And if you know about a steroid crisis, then that right there in itself is just terrible. But that was the only thing I was using a pharmaceutical for me to be able to breathe, with the weight gain and all that. But with the cannabis and, with my brother Kobe, I love him dearly. When I was too sick to actually go out to seek resources about cannabis, he's not a consumer because he can't. And he went to different events trying to find a doctor. He found a doctor. He found Dr. Hodge, which is my first cannabis doctor. And when I went to his doctor's office, I could barely make it in. So I could barely walk, and I was in a wheelchair. And that's the only thing that got me out that wheelchair was cannabis. The only thing that got me off of opioids was cannabis. And another thing is how the providers and the pharmacies made you feel like an addict when you were just trying to relieve your pain, because you have all the checks and balances when it comes to the
picking up the opioids. You have to give your license for one. Mm-hmm. And then you have to can only have so much, and it's in a particular time frame. And
it was the fact, like, they made you feel like you was an addict. You go to the doctor to get some type of relief, even though my doctor knew what type of pain I was in. I had to take the drug test. It's like, decide you went to this doctor, they prescribed this for you. I can't help what that doctor prescribed to me because I had to go see that doctor for pain. It wasn't like I was pharmacy hopping. Then you get to the pharmacy, then they want to do limits. Going to this one particular pharmacy, it was like, no, we can't, you can't get it here because, we went down to the pharmacy.
We did. And they told you couldn't get it because her doctor changed. So they were looking at it as if she was going from doctor to doctor just trying to get opioids. And that was not the case, and so you felt almost like a criminal, an addict criminal and all of that. Because even when I went to go pick them up for her, I had to, of course, show my ID and everything. But it's just the conversations that I had to have with the pharmacist, just to pick up her medication, her prescribed medication. It was just ridiculous,
Stressful.
Right. Yeah. And so even now, as you kind of hinted at, like the Georgia Medical Cannabis Program is still very restrictive. So even though you're going from like the opioids to medical cannabis, like, can you tell us a little bit about the Georgia Medical Cannabis Program? Like, it's low THC oil only, right?
Right.
And so, that's why I say it's technically not a medical cannabis program, because they specify in the bills low dose THC. And here in Georgia, it seems like you just have to, I don't know if you just have to tiptoe around the plant, because the legislators, they know the benefits of it, but a lot of them don't want to listen to it, because if Nixon didn't listen to it with the Schaefer report, what makes you think that these people are going to listen to it? But the low dose THC program, yes, Nathan Deal did go ahead and sign Haley's Hope into act. However, it took Brian Kemp to come along and to pass the where we're able to have dispensaries and processing. I forgot the name that they named that was back in 2019. Sure. However, we had a low dose THC program here. And that's when we were able to start getting our low dose THC card. However, the problem was that there were no dispensaries where we're supposed to get it.
If like, I took this edible that's probably not low dose THC, it is the only thing that is helping my condition. Just like, that must be a challenge to know what formulations of cannabis help you both with your individual conditions, like, and not being able to get that. So how do you navigate that difficulty, those intricacies in the Georgia market?
Well, basically, when we had CBD stores, we still have them now, but they're changing the law on that too. But it was the CBD stores, so basically it was like a wild, wild west in a sense. You got it wherever you could, but you could not be out there and just getting it from anywhere, because you don't know what's in it. So the CBD stores were our saving grace, I would say. So that's why we're such advocates for them. Even though we're medical cannabis, we were also advocates for those CBD stores, because they were the ones that were there for us when we needed the product. So it was all hemp-based products. But that's where we went. So they had smokables, edibles, the gummies, they had tinctures, all that as well. So that's how we were able to survive during that time, was just the CBD stores and the products that they sold.
Yeah, and can you talk?
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you're so good. I don't want to cut you off. But,
you're good.
Can you talk a little bit about how that is changing? I know that, like, when we met previously, we were talking about the Georgia Farm Bill, and I know the federal Farm Bill, it's like 0.3% THC is like the max across 50 states that hemp-derived products can have. I know there's some loopholes in that, like THCA products, or, if you have a package of edibles and it's like 0.3% is the total of the package on a dry weight basis, you can kind of like split it up so each edible is still like 10 milligrams of THC. Within that loophole. Can you talk about how the Georgia medical cannabis market is changing to maybe like impact local farmers or impact patients like yourselves?
Well, do you want to take this one?
And she's better at memorizing the bill numbers, but I can say SB 494 is the bill that was just passed this year, and it was signed into law. So effective October 1st, the CBD stores will no longer be able to sell THCA.
Smokables. Yeah, any type of smokable hemp.
Yeah. Yes, the smokables and the edibles as well.
Yeah, you can't do edibles. The only thing they're able to have is
gummies,
drinks, and they want to limit. Here's the kicker. They want to limit the potency to topicals. However, they sold this particular bill to the legislators, the ag commissioners, ag commissioners, basically were saying, look, we want to protect the kids. So how many kids do you actually see going around with topicals? Why do you want to limit the topical amount? So it's something deeper to it. However, we understand that some people there might have been bad players in there. You know what I mean? But do you have some legitimate CBD stores that are helping the patients? And you have some people who can't afford the medical cannabis evaluations. You have some people who don't want to go to the doctor because they're concerned about having to give up their rights, their gun rights or whatever, because it's in their mind. It's like, okay, I get my medical cannabis card, then I am going to let the government know that I'm using cannabis. But yeah, it's a line in there that says, unlawful use of drugs kind of thing. So it's like, just educating some people about the benefits of getting a medical cannabis card or low dose THC card. But not everybody wants to get that. Not everybody can afford that. And people have grown accustomed to trust the CBD stores.
Mm-hmm. But not only that, too, the number of conditions that we have. We only have 17 conditions in this state that you can have in order to get your medical cannabis card. So what about those patients that have other conditions that are not on the list and they don't qualify for the card? So now you're taking away their medicine that they were able to get from the CBD stores at this point. So those are some big changes that are going to happen at October the 1st coming up. So it's going to limit a number of people, and then also too, we're talking about the drug testing. So you do have companies that drug test. So even if you have your medical cannabis card, it's still considered to be federally illegal. Mm-hmm. So with that, what protections do they have? So that's another thing with that. So, so that's why some people don't want to get their cards either, because they're thinking about those types of things as well too. Because they're thinking, if I have that card, I'm on some radar. And also too, in our state, and they haven't really given us a reason as to why it's on there. But I noticed when I got my renewal on mine, and yours on hers as well, that our driver's license number is connected to the card now. Yeah. And we don't know why. They said that it's not connected with the DMV, but however, if it's not connected with the DMV, why would my license number be on my low dose THC card? So that's a fear too, that now that some people know that, the fear is that, okay, if I have this card and it's connected with the DMV with my license on it, then that's basically letting the police know that I'm a cannabis user.
Especially with the drug expertise class.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And you're setting up, the impetus fairly well for why an organization like the Georgia Medical Cannabis Society needs to exist. And so can you talk a little bit about the Georgia Medical Cannabis Society and maybe what the day-to-day looks like?
The day-to-day for us is crazy, I would say, at this point now. And I say that because from where we were 5 years ago when we started and what our mission was then, and still is the same mission, was to help patients navigate through our system, because you didn't have doctors that you knew of that did the evaluations. That information was redacted from by law. They're not telling who the doctors are that are licensed or, qualified to be able to do the evaluations. So if you go to the Department of Health website, you're not going to find the doctor there. And so with that, we wanted we knew what it was like for her in the beginning to navigate through to find one. Of course, when she found Dr. Hodge, it was through someone else going to a seminar. But what about those patients who didn't go to a seminar? Where do they go? That's pretty much how we got started, because we wanted to make it a little bit easier for patients to be able to navigate through the system and find providers and be able to understand what they needed to do to get their card. So that's why we started. But over the years, it's evolved. As we started seeing more and more things that were happening or what was not happening right, we kind of accidentally, in a sense, fell into legislation. And that took place. I was actually back in 2020. Yeah, back in 2020, I actually started my program at the University of Maryland, their School of Pharmacy. I was in the Master Medical Cannabis Science Therapeutics program there. And so one of the classes that we had was dealing with legislation. And one of our requirements was to track the bills in your state to look for cannabis bills. And so she was helping with my homework because I was working full time too. So she was helping me with that. She's like, okay, you know what? I'll she's like,
yes, so she's like, professors, plug your ears right now.
Yes, professors. Yes, we do get help with some of our homework. Sometimes we have to.
I was tutoring.
Yeah, she was tutoring. Yeah, she was my tutor. And so she was looking at the bills and was helping to track the bills and so forth. And we were sitting there looking like, whoa, all this is going on. And we had no idea of some of the bills that were being introduced regarding the medical cannabis programs or hemp, hemp itself. So that's how we kind of got into that. And so at that point, that's when she started going down to the Capitol and testifying on some of the bills and things were being introduced and so forth. Wow. And so that's how we kind of fell into the legislative piece of that, because we realized that was something that was truly needed. We wanted to advocate for the patients in this state because we're patients ourselves. So those laws affect us. So everything that we do is not just for us, it's for, everybody, whether they had a card or not. So that's why I said our organization has evolved over the years. So that's why I say our day-to-day is kind of crazy because we're doing a multiplicity of things. Definitely wanting to, help patients, also help eradicate the stigma. That's another one with the podcast that we have and still, have. Educate the public. So that's another one part of our mission, because there's so many people out there that really don't know what cannabis can do and what it can do for you. So education is definitely needed. So that's why I'd say it's crazy. So any given day, it's like we can wake up and decide, we're going to do this, and then something else happens and we have to shift over here to do something else. Just to
right. So
there's a lot of movements.
As you've been talking about the intricacies within the Georgia cannabis industry, like, it's overwhelming. There's so many things so many moving parts here and so much legislation. I know for me, at least, it's hard. It's like sometimes it's written in a different language, and it's sometimes so shrouded in secrecy that I'm curious how you kind of prioritize. How do you choose where to start even?
Oh, then that is very difficult because in the beginning we were always trying to make sure that we made time for the patients because they would call in, people call in having questions and stuff like that. However, as we evolved over the years, our task and, our checklist and stuff has grown and grown and grown. But as far as how do we prioritize? I guess which one is just screaming aloud? It's
that's basically it. that squeaky oil gets wheel, the squeaky wheel gets oil thing. Yeah. So whatever's screaming the loudest is where we have to start, and that's sometimes where it shifts. So legislation now has been the biggest part of it because of what's been basically going on. Although we're still doing some things in the educational realm as well, but the legislation has been pretty big, and that's some of the things we're looking at also too, is working with people to get them to be advocates as well. So that's another thing. That's another program that we kind of have spun up as well, in doing that, because we realize that we need more voices. We need more people to be able to go out and to talk to their elected officials, because our voices matter, and if we're not speaking up, they're not listening. And so we have to make them listen. And so it's more of the more people you have, the better your outcome is the way I see it. If those elected officials start to take a look and say, okay, well, there was one person up here yesterday that was, making some noise. Okay. You can swat them away a little bit. But now I have 50 people in my face saying the same thing. that one voice, one sound, we're all, all speaking the same language and telling what we want, then they have to listen at that point, because they realize at that moment, okay, these are the people who will go in that voting booth and select my name. And if I don't listen to them, the next time they may not select my name. So that's kind of what we're looking at right now is working with people to have them register to vote, for one, and then learn more about how to, and she's putting up our yes, and getting them to understand more about the civics. I would say learning that, because of in some areas they took it out of school. I remember mine, they took it out of schools. My mother was a civics teacher. And so by the time I got to high school, they had taken it out of schools. So there are a lot of people out here who just don't even understand how the government works, and that they don't really realize that they have a voice. And so that's what we're working with now is helping to people to understand that you have a voice and you need to be heard, and let's get out here and, make our presence known and tell them what we want.
Right. And I think that, we've kind of been talking about like the education piece and the legislation piece being separate entities, but I think in this case they work hand in hand, yes, like education about how the plant works and how those stigmas that we've all heard all of our lives might not be based in truth. What I'm trying to say is I think that learning how the plant works and like how those stigmas that we've all heard all our lives are not based in truth comes hand in hand with kind of understanding the legislation around those things. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Does that resonate with you?
It does. And because it's one thing to know what the plant does yourself. But if you don't speak to your legislators and help to educate them as well, then they don't know either. So it's both educating the public and also educating our elected officials too. So it does go hand in hand.
Right. And like you've given our listeners like a lot of actionable steps on how to kind of do the grassroots work of changing the Georgia medical cannabis industry legislation. Is there anything else you want to add to that? What can like everyday Georgia residents do to help make changes in your space?
Start at home. Start at home. Start with your city council. If you have a city or you unincorporated, the county commissioners. Find out whether or not, if you can attend, at least know what's going on. See whether or not if they have a virtual YouTube channel, YouTube meetings, so that you can at least catch up. Get on the mailing list, on the email notifications, so that you can get updates about what's going on in your county. Talk to your legislator. Introduce yourself to your legislator. If here in Georgia, the Capitol is hard to navigate to, that's another reason why it took us so long to actually be well enough to go to the Capitol. And so a lot of times, I guess it's like out of sight, out of mind, but you need to be in their ear. You need to request, time with your legislator. Say, hey, this is my concern. You need to have constant communication till it's a point. It's like, wait a minute, they are squeaky wheel. Start with your neighbors, the people that might, not everybody want to talk to their neighbors. However,
but we do need to get back to that type of community though. And the reason why I say that is because we know that people have what we call the 9 to 5. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times these meetings happen during the daytime when people are at work. So if you can get with your community, get with your neighbors, you can kind of tag team. Maybe you can't go to the meeting this time and I can, or I go the next time, you go the next time and then you start having these small community meetings where everybody's sharing information. And we're in a virtual world now, so even if one person can go to the meeting and others can't, have a little, set up a Zoom call with your neighbors.
Oh,
and
yeah.
be able
Right.
to give that information, share that information so everybody knows what's going on. Because you would be surprised some of the things that were actually happening just in our neighborhood with some things that were happening a while back. And we were reaching out and just talking to our neighbors about some things and they didn't even know what was going on. And so you'd be surprised what your neighbors don't know. But if we get back to that community and start getting to know each other in that way, you know, we can kind of, like I said, tag team. So that's one tip I would give, because, you know, the first thing you'll hear is, I can't go to the meetings because I have this, that, and the other. But there are some people who may be retired, you know, that you can actually talk to, and they can go to the meetings more frequently. So building that community is what is key. And we need to go back to that. We had that, you know, back growing up, we had more community. And I think going back to that would actually help, you know, alleviate some of the lack of knowledge or the inability to be able to go to your legislators during the daytime when they have those particular hours. And then also talk to them about having town halls. I've seen that happen. You having town halls in the evening time or even on the weekend when people can attend, doing something like that so that they can actually listen to you. But the only thing is, they said, what is that thing that you have not because you ask not?
Yeah.
That. And so if you're not asking your elected officials to have these types of town halls where you can get information or even talk to them, they may not even do it.
Yeah.
Right.
And also join groups. If you don't know, that's another thing. Yeah. We're giving this advice, say, go talk to this person, go talk to that person. No, find a activism group. Like, say, for instance, you know, like, you know, if you're interested, whatever your common interest in, find those groups. Social media is out there. Evaluate the groups first before you say, hey, I'm going to commit to this. Start looking at that stuff and see whether or not if it aligns with, you know, you. So if it aligns with you and your beliefs, then that's where you go, because, you know, that's how we started finding out about these different challenges in the community and stuff like that. You know, we started working with organizations around here in this area. And I'm just like, you know, that's another thing. You know, you can search. Social media does come in handy sometimes. You know, look for those special interest groups that you're interested in.
Right. And we know, you know, as women, as members of other like marginalized communities, that coalition building and experience sharing is like a very real form of activism and has, like, in history resulted in change. And so finding like a like-minded community group where maybe, you know, someone in the group is retired and can attend these town halls, like, is a very valuable piece of advice. And so in the meantime, while this activism is happening, while we're waiting and pushing for these changes to be made, what advice do you have for medical cannabis patients in Georgia to navigate these intricacies on the day-to-day?
Well, really and truly, what we have to do is to unite and let our legislators know, our local government know what we want. Also, we need to let them know we want it on the ballot. We want home grow. We want all of this stuff. You know, we need to express to a point to where this is like a life or death situation for so many. And
right.
so
and it is.
And so this is what we have to do. We have to, I used to make I made this statement like when I was a kid, like I was a teenager. I said, we got to unite and fight. And this is exactly what we have to do. We have to unite and fight. And the thing is, the issue has been trying to separate the terms between hemp and cannabis. And we need to go ahead and realize it's the same plant. You know what I mean? So it's just different species. So once we get a united front, then we'll be able to get more. So, yeah.
And for me too, the other thing is a stigma. And that's, you know, those of us who are cannabis users, I'm going to say patients, whether patient or non-patient, there's such a stigma surrounding it. And especially if you know, for those in the workforce and so forth, we have to get to a point where we feel comfortable, you know, saying that we are. And it took me a while. For a long time, nobody even knew that I had my card. for a while. Because I just wouldn't say it in certain spaces. But now I'm at a place now where even my coworkers know. I'm just like, it's not news to them anymore when I start talking about it, and then I find out just because I'm having that conversation, I'm finding out more and more of my coworkers who basically was saying, oh yeah, I know about that. Or they live in states that, we're talking virtually, they live in states that have legal programs and so forth. So it's have just communicating, and you'll be amazed at the number of people who are, for lack of a better term, in the closet, that are out there, and it could be anybody, pastors, lawyers, doctors, a number that are out there, but they're so afraid because of their profession that, they're going to be looked down upon. And once we can get past that, I think we'll be in a better place when more people start coming out and speaking up and saying that they are, and talking about what their conditions were, and how it actually has helped them. And I think those testimonies, those stories are really what we need, to continue to hear people talk about, how it actually helped them and what it actually did, for them. I think that would be something that would truly help. That's what helped, me, even when I was listening to other people, seeing her, like I said, I was talking, seeing her and what it did for her, to get her to where she is right now. That's part of what made me a believer, and looking at like, no, there's something else to this plant. It's not just something that, your parents told you not to do. But it has medicinal properties. It's a plant. So, but just the biggest part for me is this stigma.
It's all like well and good if you like happen to have one of these 17 conditions and you get your low THC card. That's wonderful. But what about those patients who don't fit into those 17 conditions, or who might need a larger potency, And so like doing it in the structure is great, but when you fall outside of that structure, there's still that stigma. Like, sure, yes, I have my med card, but I still get weird looks if I come in smelling like cannabis. You know what I mean? And so I think that, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, so I'll notice that there are those of us who kind of cross that line, I want to say, for our in our state, where we have a low dose THC program, but that does not include vape or anything smokable. But we need that too. So that's a number of these reasons why we advocate for those CBD stores, because what we are able to get at the dispensaries is okay. But what if we need more than that? We don't have it. So we need both. So that's one of the reasons why, people say, oh, you're medical cannabis. Why are you over here advocating for this over here? Yeah. Because we don't see people, not users and non-users, or medical and non-medical. We see people as patients, period. Because everybody's a patient. If you've ever been to a doctor one time in your life, you're a patient. Right. And so that's how we see it. So people who are not on the registry, we see them as patients too. Even if you say that you're using this plant for your, we call it adult use instead of saying the recreational, but using it for adult use, you're still getting medicinal properties from that plant just from using it. Just want to say anxiety is anxiety, whether you have a card or you don't have a card, just to be able to relax after a hard day of work, or for parents, the kids running around and, and acting up or whatever. And now your nerves are just everywhere. And so you just, you have something to kind of, calm yourself down. That's still anxiety, whether you have a card or not. So you're still a patient. You're still getting medicinal properties from that particular plant. So to us, everybody is a patient. So that's why we advocate for those who are on the registry and those who are not.
Right. And it's so it's such an individual experience. Consuming cannabis is such an individual experience that you are able to make observations of how this plant affects you personally. And it might not affect your neighbor the same way. Mm-hmm. And how can you take that individual experience and put it on paper and say, well, it has to be one of these 17 things. You know what I mean? So I've never heard that perspective of we are all patients, registry or not. That is a beautiful and refreshing perspective. Thank you for sharing that. So to kind of bring this all together, let's play a little pretend. Envision yourselves 5 to 10 years in the future. What do you want the Georgia medical cannabis market to look like?
Totally comprehensive. And what I mean by comprehensive is if you have more conditions out there, and also I'd rather see it where your provider is the one who can basically say what you can use it for, not someone who sits in a legislative seat, because this is a medical professional. They went to school for this, well, not for cannabis, of course, because they're starting to teach it in schools now, but they're in their medical profession, they're trained. And if they are working with their patients, I think that those providers should be the ones to say, okay, this works for you, then I'm going to go ahead and, get you your card, basically based upon maybe another patient that they actually had who has a card, and we see what is done for them. I know this can do for you the same thing too. So that's one thing. And when I say also comprehensive, having more than just low dose THC. So just something that, have something for everybody, because everybody's body works differently. Somebody may not be able to digest the oil and they need a smokable. Or they need an edible. So everybody is different. So we shouldn't be limited to what they basically say that we can have. It should be up to that person of what they feel they can use to better mitigate their issues that they're actually having. And also a comprehensive too, to be able to go to another state with your card that you have. And some states do accept cards from certain states, but however, Georgia's card is not accepted in several places. I mean, Washington, D.C. is one where it is. Louisiana is another one when you could use it, but not every state. So I don't want to be limited to say I can only go to D.C. or I can only go to Louisiana. What if I want to go somewhere else? I want to be able to go to the dispensary there, or even if I had to call ahead to say, okay, I'm coming to your state. What do I need to bring with me to show you that I have my card in my state to be able to purchase, in your state while I'm there? Because the one thing you can say is I have neuropathy. Okay. And that's one of the conditions we have here. Now, when I jump on a plane and I go to, just anywhere, go to Idaho, just name it, the state. Does my condition stay in Georgia? No, my condition goes with me. So I want to be able to be in a place where I can go anywhere and be able to use my card and go to whatever dispensaries, whatever state that they would that they actually have. So that's what the future looks like for me, to not be limited, to be able to have what I need when I need, and it be my choice on what I want to use, not limited to what you say that I can use, because I know what works for me. My provider knows what works for me because I'm in that constant communication with them.
Yeah, but I will add to that. I want home grow.
Yes.
I want home grow. I want this plant to be treated what it is. It is a plant. I want to be able to, if we have our medical cannabis card, which is great, there's a way that they can go ahead and there's a complete plan that we already have and already imagined, and actually it's on paper, how this could be set up with the home grow situation for medical cannabis patients. But it's just like home grow, we shouldn't have to count on so-called dispensaries. So-called dispensaries, because a lot of people would prefer to have their food from their local farmer, their local farmer's market. Not everybody wants to shop at this large grocery chain. Have you seen on the internet already about all the different recalls? FDA has approved quite a few pharmaceuticals, have approved so many things. The next thing you know, you hear there's a lawsuit about it. However, if you know that you grew this plant from seed
to
right.
Yeah,
seed to flower.
And
that brings up another challenge of some medical cannabis patients is a lot, maybe if they live in rural areas and their closest dispensary is 60 miles away and they can't even move, like they can't walk, let alone operate a motor vehicle. but it's a little different. You can maybe get up, water your plant, make sure it has the right light, like trim, harvest it, whatever. And like you have your medicine in home where you might not be able to go travel to the dispensary. And so I think that is crucial for equity across the 50 states.
Yeah. Equity. And also too, when you look at another perspective, not everybody wants to grow. So I think we need both. So, you know, I mean, I don't have the best greens. So my poor plant. Oh my
That's
gosh.
why I said that's
but
why
I mean,
I'm a bullet sitter.
but bullet sitter.
Give us a bullet sitter so that as managing the plant, like, look, hey, I can't grow, you know, hey, but I have my card for this bud sitter.
Yeah. You know, something like that. But but just be able to have those options for those who don't want to grow. You still have your dispensary you can go to, and those who want to can. And that's also could be for financial purposes. You have your you know, especially for those who are on fixed incomes, if they're able to grow just like they grow their ivy plant at the house, grow your own plant. You know, that would save them some money for the folks who are on fixed income. So there's a number of things that can be done. It's just the idea of making it happen. You know.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And, you know, usually the structure of this podcast is we have one part of conversation, we take a break, we have another part of the conversation, but I got so wrapped in that I forgot to take a break. So we can end the conversation with a couple more fun questions, because you guys have talked extensively about your familiarity with the legislation in your state. So on kind of a more fun angle, what's the most fun fact you know about cannabis coming from your years of knowledge here?
We still don't know how to roll.
That's we don't. We're stuffers.
Oh my God.
Stuffers. We're not rolling with stuffers.
We went to university. Okay, when we finally when I finally had an opportunity to obtain some bud, and I didn't know the difference between different types of. I just didn't know. I just need some. So I got some, and we was like, well, what do we do now? So
that's so vulnerable.
We still don't know.
Still don't know. We just don't know. You get the pre ones, and you just
stuff. We get those cones.
You stuff cones. That's
I like the flavor cones though.
Those are really
I
good.
like the flavor
cones.
Yes, but cones are a game changer. That is. Thank you for admitting something so vulnerable.
Well, and that's another fun one for me is I'm still trying to figure this out, why it happens to me. And because I know because from studies and understand that say that cannabis is lipophilic, so it likes fat. And so for me. Found this out the hard way, that if I ever ingest cannabis, I can't eat French fries
or bacon.
That was it too. Anything that has high fat content, I can't eat it at the time, because once it starts to metabolize, it's like all of a sudden it's this instant elevation, and I called it my pin to the couch syndrome, because it's like it's one of those things you just lean back and you're just sitting there and you're just like, oh, okay. You can't move. So I found that and still don't know why it's French fries or bacon, but understanding that it's lipophilic, that's how it's actually moves through your body through fat.
Right.
But I cannot eat French fries or bacon if I have an edible.
That is a huge bummer, first of all. And it's something that I've never heard anyone else say. So
I guess I'm just weird that way.
Oh, maybe people need to pay attention to it. Maybe they don't know.
They don't know. That's
just like, oh my God.
Nobody's really thought about that with you, because you do have to watch some of the things that you can eat with that too. But that was my fun. And learning how to because of course if you don't have anybody to tell you anything about how to use it, the dosaging, anything, that's not a lot out there. That information. So knowing to go low, slow.
Yes.
That one that you can't, because I told somebody once before, I said, that's not the Duncan Hines. That's not your grandma's brownie. Okay. So get just a little piece of that. You just can't go in there, get that big square in the corner like you used to, with the home brownie. But with this one, you got to take that little corner, wait a while, see how it goes, and then try some more. Because if you don't, Yeah, once it metabolizes, you will know.
Yes, because I've heard that like eating fatty foods alongside your edibles, now that I think about it, I've heard that eating those can help it like get into your system and whatever.
It does.
But you bring up a great point of like, there's no one that really teaches you how to ingest cannabis the same way or use cannabis the same way that you might hear things about drinking alcohol, for example. You know, there's not really a mass educational system, or like even like it always has to be done like underground behind closed doors. And so that is kind of why organizations like Georgia Medical Cannabis Society are crucial, because of that education piece. You know, like growing up, there's not really someone to guide you through. There's not really someone to tell you start low, go slow, that kind of thing. And so, you know, organizations like yours are super valuable for that and so many other reasons. And so
that's why I continue to. That's why we continue to educate, and that's why I continue to educate. What's the reasons why I did go to school? Because the nickname she gave me was books. Because one of my things I'm always saying, I read somewhere. I'm always reading, and so I continue to educate myself, and still am doing that so that I can learn as much as possible, so we can have a robust type program to be able to teach the community, and that's one of my goals. Is to be able to be in a position where I can work with patients and providers, or be that go-between between the patients and the provider, the provider who doesn't know and the patient who doesn't know, but kind of work with them together to help them to navigate through it and work with that, you know, to better understand. So I'm continuing to increase my knowledge just so I can do that as well.
Well, that's beautiful. And honestly, all eyes on Georgia Medical Cannabis Society. I'm excited to see how it grows, how Georgia might change over the next few years. As a final, yes, I'm manifesting, you know, what you guys mentioned about how you idealize the future of Georgia cannabis to look like. Before we go, well, first of all, thank you guys so much for coming on the show. This has been a super insightful conversation. Yes, and your expertise is so valuable, and I'm grateful, you know, as a Veriheal employee that we partner with organizations like yours to kind of help Georgia Georgia cannabis users in general to find the doctors in their area. And so, before we go, is there anything else that you wish the world knew about cannabis?
It ain't never killed nobody. I'm sorry. I had to say it.
That one.
Yes. And it's like, we need to make sure when you have one of those legislators want to say, well, they rushed these kids to the hospital. They rushed them over here. They rushed them over there. Just ask them this one question. Did they die? They tell you part of the story, but they don't tell you the ending. So it's like, they need to educate themselves a little bit more. That's it. That's me, but definitely.
No, the same thing for me. And just, it's a healing plant. And we need to look at it as that, not to look at it as what they call it. I heard this term before the first time. Somebody called the devil's lettuce. What are you talking about? But it's not the devil's lettuce. It's a plant. It's a plant. And we need to look at that plant just like we look at any other plants that we actually see, and just call it that, and not a drug, because it's not a drug. It's a plant.
Right. It's medicine too, you know?
Yes.
It's a medicinal plant.
Yes.
So beautiful. Perfect way to end it. Thank you so much. It's been a great conversation, and I'm sure we'll speak again soon, you know?
Yes.
Sounds great.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you to Angela and Yolanda. They really just shared not only their perspective of how the Georgia medical cannabis scene exists as it is today, but changes they'd like to see, and a helpful reminder that, you know, the fight for easier access to cannabis is not over yet. Though things have improved, there's lots we can still do to keep combating that stigma, to keep pushing against legislators to help cannabis be more accessible across the board. And I'm so grateful for them sharing their insights. Thank you again. Thank you for tuning in. But before I let you go, if you are wondering if medical cannabis is the right choice for you, Veriheal can help you get all of your questions answered. We can link you with a registered cannabis physician in your area that can help you get the recommendations, the answers you need to get your medical cannabis card. So if that's something you're interested in, visit Veriheal.com. That's Veriheal.com to get started.